today. So we're lowering the lights. So we're going to focus on the important connection between storytelling and democracy. Artists are critical for a strong democracy. They help us grapple with difficult issues, as you've just heard, take different perspectives, and shape our collective imagination, all critical pieces for a vibrant democracy. Storytelling and Connection is hosted by the University of Virginia's Karsh Institute of Democracy. So please welcome our panelists. Artist Hank Willis Thomas is back for round 2. Thank you for coming back again. Can't wait to hear from you again. And the Academy Award and Emmy Award-winning filmmaker Paul Wagner, whose films have premiered at Sundance, Toronto, Telluride, and Rotterdam Film Festivals. And Golden Globe, Emmy, ACE, and Screen Actors Guild Award winner, actor Alfre Woodard. So nice to see you again. Last time I saw you was in New Orleans with Megan Byer. How great to have you here. Thank you. And then finally, our moderator is Melody Barnes, the Executive Director of the University of Virginia's Karsh Institute of Democracy and former Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council for the Obama administration. I turn it over to you. Thank you, Melody.
Thank you, thank you.
You're so welcome.
It is wonderful to be here with you all this afternoon for this final panel, which I am very, very excited to dive in. I think I won't, but I would be echoing Cynthia and talking about all of the ways that art and artists play a role in shaping our democracy. I think about poetry and dance and craft and film, and the list goes on and on. Sculpture, the list goes on and on. I think the bottom line is that democracy needs artists. Artists are fundamental to democracy. And with that in mind, I want to jump into the conversation and talk about that. And Alfre, I want to start with you and talk about the important way that artists play in expanding our conception of the American community, of who we are and how we connect with one another. And the fact that you introduce viewers to people and places that they may not otherwise ever get to see, otherwise ever get to know. And I'm curious, as you have created, and we were talking about this a little bit, your stunning, stunning body of work. And I think about the different characters that you've embodied. What do you hope that viewers will get to know about others through the characters that you play? How do you hope that connection might be made in communities through the work that you do?
Well, I mean, everybody begins the process differently, but for me, it is constantly I have to pray. However, you pray. I'm not talking about genuflecting or anything like that, but just kind of washing your spirit clean, so that your efforts, your mission is always about the people. It's always about the story. And for people who are performers, especially, and probably people in power, because you surrender to the idea of presenting yourself, you have to make sure it's not yourself you're presenting. It's not yourself ever, an artist that you're representing. We are bringing the people's stories, the people's identity, everything about the people. We're the ones that traditionally, since we first stood up on 2 legs around the fire, we're the ones, the griots, kept the lore of the tribe, held the stories, held a mirror up to the tribe, whether it was to make them laugh or weep or reflect, so that they could see themselves. And that, in turn, ensures the health of the tribe. We now recognize that we're a global tribe, and we've got all this technology, and it's, in America, it's all commerce art, but we still have to remember that that's the task, that's the gig, is the health of the community. Not just our own, not just America, but the global village. And so, for me, it is, you think about, you're not only wanting the person to be able to recognize each other, giving people a language in which they can hear each other, art is, and storytelling, but also a platform or a field upon which they can see themselves. No matter what the character is, if you've done your storytelling well as the filmmaker, as the cinematographer, as the actor, they should be able to see some aspect of themselves, even in a villain, or even if that person is heroic, they should be able to see something with it. Because everybody has all of those born qualities in them. And so basically, I put a thing on the top of one of my scripts, because you're in the 14th hour and you're cold and you're hungry and you're bleeding from the ears and they keep just giving you a cup of coffee saying, come on, you can do it. And you're like, what am I doing here? And you realize that why you're doing that. And Lorca, I discovered Lorca when I first realized I was an actor. I was probably 15. And Lorca said the poem, the song, the picture is but water drawn from the well of the people. We give it back to them in a cup of beauty that in drinking they may come to know themselves. And so that's the task, and thank goodness we are in the kind of disciplines that you get to practice till you drop, because you're in a constant state of trying to actually do that as purely as possible.
That was beautiful. And not only I'm hearing from you, people see themselves, because none of us are one-dimensional, different facets of themselves and the characters that you've embodied, but see others, people, again, that they may not otherwise get to know in those characters as well, and that building that sense of connection. It's like, oh, I know that person, or I understand why they may have done that.
And it's easier for us to resist being other or othering other people.
Which is at the essence of issues of polarization that we're seeing both domestically and globally, the othering, and we've seen wars, we've seen genocide and other as a result of that. Paula, I see you nodding your head, and I'm curious, in a minute I want to play a clip from one of your films, from Miles of Smiles, Years of Struggle, which is about the Pullman porters and their efforts to organize the first African-American trade union.
The retired Pullman porters still meet even today. These were the men who worked on the Pullman railroad cars, the sleeping cars and lounge cars.
Come back and depend on full, tell them everything about every stop and everything.
I can tell you that these retired porters are the last in a long line of men in this country. They represent 100 years of history, stretching from the days of slavery to the civil rights movement of today.
I started work for the Pullman Company in January of 1924, and I got fired as a result of my union activities around the 1st of October of 1927.
You either accept it or you reject it. It depends on what kind of vote you are, right? I accepted it. But of course I didn't like it. But what can you do?
I don't believe that the American Constitution solely because they had brotherhood and I wasn't free.
There is a poem by Langston Hughes that contains these lines. And porters on a railroad car who make, each time they make a bed, a hammer on a star that sings in space the dawn song of the race.
So, Paul, the Pullman porters, and I learned this story and this history as a little girl. but I would imagine there are a lot of people that don't know this story, don't know their experiences, may not, and as a result of that, been able to see themselves in their history, in their story, and understand why it's relevant to the larger American story. And I'm wondering how and why you think social history has become such an important part of art and filmmaking.
Well, social history was a strange new term as I began my filmmaking career. This film, by the way, was started in the late 70s. I think we finished in 81 or 82. It was first shown on public television in 82. And I came to that idea, which I found very powerful as I began my filmmaking career, actually right here. In 1976, at the bicentennial celebration, one of the largest aspects, from my point of view, was the Festival of American Folklife, which happened right here and still happens right here on the Mall. And in '76, it went on for 3 months, not a weekend or two. And the idea of that festival was to bring forth the voices of people who had not been heard in this country. And the idea of social history was that prior to that time, let's say the 60s and 70s, history was about great white people and presidents and powerful people. And around that time, historians and a broader public started thinking, well, maybe there's more to history. And especially in a democracy, there needs to be more to that history. And the festival became a fabulous stage for that idea. And not just to communicate the idea, but it was embodied because the lives of the people from all different walks of life in this country were presented on stage, literally. One of the programs actually was in this museum right just down the hall here, and it was a handful of Pullman porters talking about their lives. And a friend of mine, Jack Santino, who was a folklorist here at the Smithsonian, and I talked about that. He was presenting the program, and we were like, oh my gosh, more people need to hear these stories, and that was sort of the genesis of the film. And as Alfre is talking about, you know, it's the human connection. And when you tell a story on film, even fictional film or documentary, I would suggest, it's the humanity of the person on screen that embodies the ideas and the themes. And that's what we found with these stories. It's one thing to sort of tell the story of the history of the founding of the labor union, but when you can hear it in the voices and see on screen, in this case, the men who embodied that, suddenly you've imbued the story with a level of emotion and a level of connection for the audience that greatly transcends what you might read in the book about that history. So to me, that's the power of the filmmaking. And frankly, as a film artist, even I'm a documentary filmmaker, sometimes we consider ourselves artists.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you. It also became a way to help me come up with new ideas, and not just me alone. There were other people right here in Washington. Lorraine Gray was making a film called With Babies and Banners about the women who were working on the strike in 1936 at the Ford Motor Company. On the West Coast, independent filmmakers were making The Wobblies, the story of the union. So in that era, as social history was sort of catching on intellectually, it was starting to infuse new ideas for how films might be made, new stories to be told, and also new ways of telling them.
And I think about that, as you were talking, I was thinking about a piece that's in the exhibition right now. I think it's at Titus Guevara. And there is an image, but the child is missing from the mother's arms, the stories that aren't told. And I'm thinking about the fact that you were talking about these stories that weren't being told, and I think about your films, the Italian stone carvers and Irish immigrants, the Pullman porters, and the list goes on, and Alfre, your discussion of people being able to pour out these stories with beauty so that people can can engage them. You know, Hank, that brings me to you and some of the work that you're doing, and I'm thinking specifically about the Four Freedoms work. And again, in the exhibition, if you haven't seen the exhibition, please go. And this particular series that takes the famous, kind of the iconic Norman Rockwell photographs or paintings and moves them, changes them, puts them into a different lens. And again, who is missing and who needs to be, who is a part of this larger American story. And I'm wondering if you can talk about the Four Freedoms Project and talk a little bit about this work that you've done in collaboration with others and some who I think may still be in the room, and what you all hope to accomplish.
Sure, well. Thank you. It's great to be back. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. And I'm happy to talk more about these photographs that are upstairs. It's very exciting to be exhibiting work here because I was an intern here almost 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago.
I love it. Tell your kids internships matter.
Yeah. Well, being able to be here as a high school student and also being a docent and using artifacts from the collection to tell stories about American history to anyone who will stop and attempting to catch their attention, to tell them a story, a vignette into the past is something that was really formative for me. And so about 10 years ago, I had this idea about, well, actually, I think this Freedom from, I was here, this Freedom from Want painting, the real one, the original poster from that series might have been on display at this museum. And I took a photograph of it, and I thought about this kind of iconic American painting by Norman Rockwell. And I thought about how it didn't really look like my family or many of the families that any Thanksgiving I've been to. And so I spoke to my collaborators who own photographs, Wyatt Gallery and Eric Gottesman and Michelle Wu and another person, Emily Shore, about what would Norman Rockwell's America look like today. And knowing that the America that Norman Rockwell lived in didn't look like the America that he painted. But for instance, and to think about these, on January 6th, 1941, FDR gave his famous For Freedom speech. I say that because 80 years later, January 6th, 2001, in the same building where he gave this speech about everyone being entitled to four basic freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom from want, freedom from fear, and freedom of worship, took on a very different meaning. And I paused because there's an echo there that has not really been talked about. That on the day the Capitol was stormed, in the same day that on the anniversary of an iconic speech about American values. But I was looking at this image, the Rockwell version of this image. And if you look closely at the Rockwell version, there's an African-American woman in the shadows, and there are people with rosary beads. But it seemed to say that to be American in 1943, you could be Catholic or you could be Protestant. And I wanted to challenge myself and others to reimagine what that would look like. And so we thought that we'd be able to just make 4 different photographs that were really, and Claudia Pena, who's here also, who's the executive director for Freedoms, just invited many people. We were in LA and knew, just by nature of being 21st century people, we knew people from different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, and we asked them to participate in our photographs. And then when we made the photographs, I don't know how many people came through, but there were definitely hundreds. And Wyatt and I were looking at the edits, and we were thinking about which picture can summarize quote unquote America. And so we wound up making 82 different versions of the Four Freedoms photographs. And so we're happy that 2 different sets are in the collection of the United States government through Arts and Embassies and the Hirshhorn collection. And it's really exciting that these images, which are really trying to show who we are, challenged us to reimagine who we are. And even to reimagine what does freedom of speech look like in the 21st century? What does freedom from fear, and freedom of worship, and freedom from want look like? And so Four Freedoms, and I see Barbara Schuster, who I gotta acknowledge, who was one of our earliest collaborators. We really believe, I know it sounds corny, but I believe in America. I believe in the United States of America, with all of its complexity and its obstacles that we face every second of its existence, and all the contradictions. There is some bit of hope that maybe it's brainwashing, that I can never give up on. And so we realize that as artists, we live in the future. What's amazing about art is that the audience is yet to be when it's created. Like whenever I make something, like I don't know where it's going to be seen, who's going to see it, and that means will they even be in this? Maybe someone from the 22nd century will see these images. And so I'm literally sending a message in a bottle to the future. And so when we think about what it looks like to make things for people yet to be, there's a different responsibility. And I think when we think about politics, the people who write our laws are designers. We don't think about Congress people as legislators as designers, but that is a creative action. And what would happen if we started to think about civic life as a creative tool, and a creative tool that is meant to make, to speak to people who are yet to come. And so Four Freedoms as its mission is attempting to put critical discourse into political discourse through fine art thinking, which embraces failure, embraces critique, and embraces evolution of thought. So we're not FOUR freedoms. We realized in order to be future forward, we needed to be FOR freedoms, meaning that it demands that we are open to freedoms that we don't currently agree with or even know about. And so that's really kind of what we've been working on the past 8 or 9 years.
Wow. There's so much to talk about there, and to bring others in. Hank, for staying with you for a second, your comment, I believe in America, which is something that resonates deeply with me. And earlier in the back we were talking, and Paul said, "Oh, you're from Virginia." I said, "Yes, I'm a Southerner." And sometimes people are like, "Oh, you claim being a Southerner?" It's like, yes, this is my story. And I'm curious, Hank, as you talk about believing in America, but also challenging old conceptions of what that means. If you've, for example, in this work or other pieces of work in Four Freedoms, if you've received pushback on some of these ideas, or people have challenged some of those ideas, and then Alfre and Paul, I'm wondering if you've had any of that reaction to some of your work as well.
Yeah, so, and I saw part of the previous panel where there was this amazing photograph of Reverend and Congressman John Lewis. And one of our breakthrough projects was we used Spider Martin's photograph of Reverend John Lewis and Hosea Williams, who were facing down the Alabama State Troopers in their peaceful protests on March 7th, 1965, which became known as Bloody Sunday. And they were given a 2-minute warning, and it was like the standoff between people with guns and billy clubs, and people with hope, with pride, dignity, and belief in America on the other side. And we put up a billboard that said "Make America Great Again" in Mississippi, in that case, along Highway 80, which is the same highway that they marched. And we are part of our question. We believe that it's important to put questions into the world, not just answers. And the question that billboard was asking was, when was "quote unquote" America greater than it is today? If we are trying to make America great again, when exactly was that moment? And if we were polled, I think that the likeliest moment where people would suggest that we lived up to our responsibilities or our dreams as Americans was during the Civil Rights Movement, when disenfranchised, quote unquote, ordinary people, Americans, took it upon themselves to advance society forward in face of the brutality of people who were representing the government. And so that was really exciting as something to put up in the world, but then we got phone calls from people who lived down there that were like, you're gonna get somebody killed, these billboards are really, dangerous, and what are you saying? And then there was an article, many articles, but the one that really made me feel proud was there was one on CNN which said, the headline said, Mississippi residents unsure of controversial billboard's intent. And CNN loves to make you feel a certain way. They're like, this is good, this is bad. And they're like, people don't know about this. And we felt like that was actually the goal, to actually make something that is complex enough that people don't know what to do with, because hopefully that unsettled feeling will provoke more questions, which would create more challenges and more complex challenges for us to rise to.
Paul or Alfre, if there's anything you want to.
I just wanted to comment on the work that Hank has done, which I was familiar with before coming in today. Really terrific.
Microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've been impressed with the four freedoms. I knew them as the FOUR initially. Really terrific work, and I'm picking up, Hank, on your very brave statement about I believe in America. It's a good thing. And one of the things I love about the work of those photographs is that the one thing, for all the transformation that you brought to it, which is wonderful, you also retained something in the original images, I think, which was the look, for example, of the freedom of speech, the other people looking with respect to the person who is speaking. And we don't know what she's saying. We don't know what she's saying politically. It could be something they disagree with, it could be something they love. I think there's versions, tell me if I got this wrong, but you have versions where there's a couple of two women, presumably gay women, holding hands and speaking. So I'm thinking, so that could be a school board in Montgomery County, Maryland, right? But you also have a version of that with I trust a Muslim woman in a headscarf. That could also be the Montgomery County School Board. And she's speaking in opposition, if some of you all know the news that's going on in Montgomery County. But the look on the faces of everyone listening is still that of respect. So I think that's, that's something I'm bringing to it, obviously, but that's what good art does, right? We're allowed to, are encouraged to bring our own thinking to it. And to me, that's one of the brilliant things that you did, was to maintain, this is still about respect. It's not always there, and these days it's sometimes rarely there, but this is an American ideal, and this is the way we're going to depict it.
Well, we're in keeping with this theme of challenging and provocation and complexity. I think that artists have consistently done that kind of work, put things out in the world for us to grapple with. And there are pieces of all of your work that come to mind in that category. I mean, Paul, you directed a film called Boom and Bust, and it asks us to take on this question of the American dream and workers' sense of worth and hopefulness, or the lack thereof, as their economic securities starts to collapse. And Hank, The Truth Booth is another collaborative piece of work that you've done, an interactive piece of work that you've done. And I think we have an image that we can show people. And in these, this is real. The Truth Booth has gone to, I think, to every state in the country and did so before the 2016 election and gave people the prompt, "The truth is," and asked people to engage that question. And the act of, Paul was just talking about it as well, of engagement and free expression and what is your truth, also can be very, very challenging. And then Alfre, we're going to show a clip from a piece of your work from the film Clemency. Again, asking people to engage with a very challenging question for many, one that is divisive in many contexts, and that of the death penalty. And in this film, the film requires people to consider the death penalty from lots of different perspectives, including yours as the prison warden, required to act on the decision to put someone to death. And if we could show that clip, I'll come back and ask a question that I'll start with you, Alfre. We could show Clemency.
I keep going. I do my job.
These next 24 hours are crucial. Anthony's defense attorney has already asked for a reprieve from the governor's office.
Do you want to play this good guys or bad guys? No, I'm one of the bad guys. I give these men respect. All the way through.
I want to share a bed with my wife. How long is this going to be going on?
All we want is to be seen and to be heard. This is not over.
I don't know if this is going to make things better, but I'm trying.
You can't understand. You can't know what it's like. I'm alone. I'm going to fight for him right up until the very moment you stick that needle in his arm.
You didn't know I can't do this on my own, baby.
I want to be home.
That literally gives me the chills just watching the trailer. And Alfre, I'm wondering, again, picking up on this topic of the way that art and artists help us engage these issues. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about what you hoped for when you were doing this film, and whether you think, whether it's this work or other pieces of work that you've done, help people engage issues in ways that they otherwise don't or won't. I mean, this isn't a debate on Meet the Press or on CNN. This is people going to watch an independent film. Tell us a little bit more about this character, what you hope for, and what you hoped might happen as a result of it.
Chinoya Chukwu, can you turn my mic down? It feels a little loud. Thanks. When I met her, she's just a vibrant young woman. She actually, she is a filmmaker, but she worked for 8 years in the prison system in Ohio. So she had a lot of connections, and we were able to get into places. And our producer, Bronwyn, I'm blanking her name right now, but I met them first, and I knew the subject matter. And I said to them, and knowing that she was an activist and I am an activist, I said to her, the thing is, when we make a film, you have to completely take off that activist sensibility. You have to tell the story. You can't put a story out and expect it to have a certain, to be received in the way that you intend it. If you tell the story well, if you tell the truth as far as you can perceive of it, and it might change in a day or whatever, then that's all you can do, and then you let it go. Your activist self hopes that it stirs up the waters enough that something comes from it, but you have to respect your viewers, whatever you're presenting, enough to let them make their own choices, because creativity doesn't belong to us. We just happen to be the ones that surrender to it more easily. But it is a principle. It is it's the same that none of us can own the laws of physics. We certainly can use the laws of mathematics, but they don't belong to us. That's how I view creativity, and especially when you're using it for a purpose. So we all agreed that we would never, although I met her when we were both working to get Tyra, and I'm forgetting Tyra's name, I don't know what's wrong with me. This is bothering me. To get clemency for her in Ohio, which she eventually did get. And so, yes, then we start to work as artists on it. And I always like to go to work when it's something that I don't know that I can do. One of the great things about being an actor is that if you're 85, you're still learning. You have to learn something every time you go out to work. And so I knew how I felt about the death penalty from growing up in Oklahoma, and even being 8 years old and feeling sick and weird because nobody knew how to talk about it every time they fried somebody up at one of the state penitentiaries. And nobody talked about it. It was this thing. And so I always was against the death penalty before it was even talked about to me politically. I just knew as a kid it made me feel weird because it seemed against everything else that I was being taught and I was believing. So then the role that I would want would not be Richard Schiff's role, would not want to be standing outside with the candle where I have been before, but I know when there is a job that people might already have an opinion of, or people they have opinions about. I like to go to those people because I know none of us are ever born doing the act or being capable of the act that we eventually become famous or infamous for. So the job is to find the human being. So I knew that my job was to find the human being of the little girl, did she tear frogs off, the legs off of frogs? Who says, I want, and I'm a proud Southerner too, I just love it. But, when do you want to be a warden? So that's the journey of finding that. And in doing that and having the most intense journey of my life was doing the prison tours. Because again, you cannot, everything any one of us is capable of, we're all capable of. Whether it's the greatest thing, the most heroic thing, or the most despicable thing. But we just all learn how to keep ourselves in check and go to our higher self. So that was a tough thing, but really getting to know and wanting to present. Now the majority of Americans, I think something in the upper 60s, if not 70%, are against state-sponsored murder, but we still haven't made a move on it. But it's still very contentious because before you can end up talking about that, you talk about burning books and nobody stays on the subject. And so one of the things that I felt was missing from that conversation, because you're always hoping that the things you put out, they move a conversation forward. And we felt that one of the critical sort of points of view that was never at the table was the people that we charge to actually carry out the the death penalty and what it does to them. And so that was a reason to do that. And in doing that, I met women, probably about 5 wardens, and 4 of them were African American. And they were all much more respectable than I am. I mean, they would be people in your book club or your, in the choir with you. And I realized, I learned that they come from mental health. They come from social work. And yes, if we're going to do that, it's on us to change a system. But until we do, who better to be in a situation where you've got 3,000 people corralled and trying to keep them all safe than a woman, frankly. And I love men, but a woman who's not emotional, who's not demonstrative, but a woman who's steady, who says, no, you can't go to your mother's funeral. Well, I'd go like, are you, what a bitch, yeah, we're inhumane. But the truth is, after you meet them and you talk to them, it's like, yeah, if you've got all these people there and you make one allowance, I'm a mom. You start changing the rules and all hell breaks loose. But anyway.
Well, and so the complexity of this character, and going back to something you said in the beginning, allowing us to see the different facets of these individuals.
And the damage.
Right.
The damage. All of the people working in that prison system, they are either on their 2nd or 3rd marriage, and it's over. Families have broken up. The children not speaking. And they have a higher PTSD rate than our troops that have done multiple tours. It is, and they sort of socialize within short circles because nobody wants to be around them. But yet, we wash our hands, but our hands, all of our money goes to that. Not to proselytize, I can now because I'm not the actor, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to give the audience a chance to get into this conversation. So 1, let us know if you have any questions. 2, if you also have a question or a response to the question that I was posing to Alfre and others, does the work of artists help you engage on issues affecting our democracy in ways that you otherwise would not? I think I see someone. Oh, no, you were just setting up. Yes.
Hi, I'm Darren Pasha. Hi, everyone. I have a question for all of you. Thank you for coming here. I am Iraqi Kurdish, and I'm openly gay. And I call myself an artist because I draw art, and I have to speak about topics that someone like me right now in Iraqi Kurdistan being gay, someone will take a flame and set me on fire. So I have to be very fortunate that I live in Washington, D.C., to be in a room with people like you that I look up to, who, Miss Alfre Woodard, you're a TikTok sensation. There are hashtags about you that people motivates you. It lifts people up. I learned that through Generation Z. I'm a millennial, and I learned that through TikToks and Instagram, how these are stories and conversations that we need to have. It's 2023, and I want to wrap this up by asking all 4 of you, as someone who is Iraqi Kurdish, openly gay, in Washington, D.C., I draw art because I found myself during the pandemic. When the world was quiet and everybody was inside, I actually was like, what makes me happy? It is not the elementary school I was forced to go to, the high school I went to, and the college, Columbia University, that my mom, I did that to make her happy. But I asked myself, what makes me happy? And when the world was shut down, I opened up my laptop, and on a Surface Pro, each image that I did took 48 hours. And I am slowly finding myself, who I am, what I want to be, And I want to appreciate all four of you because it's conversations like this. On this day, Democracy Day, Smithsonian, I'm going to keep looking at that image and the name because we need to have more conversations like this because there's someone like me out there in Suleimania, which is a city I grew up in Iraqi Kurdistan, who is terrified. They wake up, they open their closet, and they don't know what to wear because everyone's telling them what to do. And I am someone that, on my passport it says asylum status because I escaped. And I'm someone who I have to be very true to myself. And I just want to say the advice, if all four of you can have for me is, because I'm showing my first solo exhibit actually next year, and I've worked really hard, and it's about goddamn time, sorry curse, that I show the world what I've been working on. And if you have one advice for me that you could tell me, I would really appreciate that. And Miss Alfre Woodard, it's a pleasure. I am nervous, and you made my mom really happy that I came today. And I'm very nervous for her. So it was an honor, all of you. Thank you. I'm going to wrap this up.
Thank you. Thank you. So, well, first of all, thank you for sharing with us and advice about how, for you as an artist, just beginning your career and sharing yourself through your art.
You know, one of the things that we grow into, and you don't really know when it happens, but I'm so quick to tell young people or people who are turning a new page and starting something new, is to really not look for a result, not expect anything. It is a gift that you are giving, and there's something that you have to reverse, an ego that wants you to watch the person you give the gift to open the present and either be happy or whatever. It's just giving. And again, you're speaking your truth, and that's all the practice is. It's putting it out there. And you will receive other things from people, but never to look for a response in the gift you've given or the truth you've told. If it gets their knickers in a twist, that's on them. If they are bowled over by it, good. You're just being a place where God is shining through. So not to take it personally, because you are practicing something that's innate in all of us, just as innate as breathing, and that is being creative. So you have nothing to do but enjoy. There's no mistakes.
Just one thing that comes to my mind listening to you talk. We're on a panel talking about the use of art to make political change, to make political statements, to improve our democracy. But also, any work of art, any expression, artistic, contributes to democracy. It doesn't have to be a political statement. And you know, that's what I think about hearing you speak, that your work, regardless of what it has to say about this country, about democracy, because it is your own unique expression and you make it in a democratic society, it contributes to our larger conversation about our democracy.
And I just want to say congratulations on your show. It's very exciting, and to acknowledge that every waking moment is an opportunity for us to be creative. You know, we don't think about the red jacket that you put on or the blue shoes that I chose to wear as choices that are creative, but I think that they are. Like how we operate, how we navigate the world, the way I sit in the chair, the way we speak, these are all creative actions, and that being an artist isn't just about making something or being a part of something where you are on a stage or writing something. It is literally every conscious moment, and that if you put it in that context, You recognize that your art is you, and that means that the artifacts that you leave behind, yes, they have a meaning, but the greatest impact that you'll likely ever have as an artist is on the people who you share space with, or now digital space with, thanks to TikTok.
You know, it occurs to me that art is a way, and creativity is a way that human beings express themselves. That's a way that we communicate each other. It's our mother tongue. And when we do that, it is empowering. It empowers the individual, it empowers, two people together, a whole people together. And since man started to govern and to draw boundaries and to have, laws or whatever, the thing that really shakes that up is when the people actually are cohesive and they recognize themselves as community. So just the very fact of, depending on where you are on Earth, the fact of your existence is a political statement. So everything is political, especially in America. Politics, don't bring politics into it. So what we're all out of it if we don't do that. It's politics, that's why we're in families, how you learn how to socialize yourself, how to be, among other human beings. So we get told, artists, we need to shut them up. Okay, if they make us laugh, fine, but don't let them talk. Don't tell people they should go vote. Things like that. Just sit down and be quiet, or just dribble. But it's, that's what is scary about the people who oppose to them, people that oppose democracy, whether they're consciously doing it or not. If democracy makes them nervous, then they have a problem with our freedoms. If art makes them nervous, you can go, I don't like the color, or whoa, that made my head spin, the abstract art you just did. But if you're not getting some kind of reaction, you're certainly not helping changing the landscape.
Well, and the art of navigating that and engaging that, debating it, disagreeing, agreeing, disagreeing productively, I mean, these are all necessary muscles to develop for self-governance, which is elemental for what democracy, our constitutional republic, requires of us. I will say these are artists of a different level, but I will say, as someone who loves and appreciates art, and, as my friends know, I've taken acting classes, dancing classes, flute lessons, piano lessons, the list goes on and on. But I will say, even in doing the work that I have done in public policy, when I've done those other things, that it opens me up. It requires me to use a part of myself that does the political work better and does the policy work better, because I think it is so much a part of who we are. It is our language. Whether you are doing it at this level or you're just someone walking the world who has a deep appreciation for it. We will need to, unfortunately, wrap up our conversation. I'm getting the time hook. But I want to thank you all so much for engaging in this conversation with us, but even more for the work that you all are doing in so many different ways, in different places, every day, that make our democracy better and stronger because of your voice and because of your work, because of the way that you allow and provoke us to think and to think differently. So thank you so much for everything that you